Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. May all the peace and blessings of the Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be on all of us. Today I want us to look at a very brief concept, that is the concept of the hypertension, or rather the high blood pressure. Let's define what is a high blood pressure, what's the normal blood pressure a person is required, what are some of the things that makes a person to have high blood pressure, and how can they be controlled, and what are their effects in adverse conditions. Very good. Now, let's look at the first one, hypertension. Hypertension, it is an increase in blood pressure above the normal. When the blood pressure goes above the normal, that is what we call hypertension. A normal person has a normal blood pressure, that is 90/60, which varies between 90/60 and 140/90 millimeters of mercury. Here we have the numerator. We also have the denominator. The numerator refers to the systolic pressure during contraction. Basically, systolic means the contraction. The denominator represents the diastolic pressure during relaxation. And we know, class, that for every heartbeat, the heart undergoes through contraction and relaxation. And that is a concept that we have demystified sometimes back. Now let's look at what are some of the things that causes high blood pressure. Number one, excessive alcohol intake. Number two, we have large intake of salts, stress, hardening of arteries, deposition of cholesterol. Now class, how will these things bring about the high blood pressure? How? For example, a concept like the hardening of arteries. Class, when the arteries are hardened, that means they become very narrow. And when they become very narrow, the blood will be passing through that place at a very high pressure. And we know the volume and pressure are inversely proportional. Whereas the volume decreases, the pressure goes up. And therefore, the high blood pressure may cause the arteries and the capillaries to burst. And when the arteries and the capillaries burst, that is now a person can feel or can get stroke, especially when the arteries are passing through the brain. Or a state of paralysis. It can go a state of paralysis. And therefore we say, all these overwork the heart. How? Because the heart will be trying to generate blood at a high pressure so that it can pass that narrow arteries and capillaries. And in the event, the heart is going to overwork. And once the heart is going to overwork as it pumps blood, it may cause the arteries and the capillaries to burst. And once the arteries and the capillaries which bursts the brain cells burst, they may cause stroke or even death. And at times, they can cause paralysis at some point. Now, what are some of the control of these high blood pressure? Number one, regular physical exercises. Avoid the intake of excess salt. We also have avoiding stress, healthy diet, and as well avoiding alcohol and cigarette smoking. Basically, class, we say that high blood pressure, it is an increase in blood pressure above the normal range. And we say the normal blood of a normal person varies between 90/60 and 140/90 millimeters of mercury. And therefore, the numerator represents the systolic blood pressure, while the denominator represents the diastolic blood pressure during relaxation. And we saw that, and we said that in our previous lessons, that the heart undergoes, every heartbeat, the heart undergoes through rhythmic contraction and relaxation. And at the first moment, when the heart is filling with blood, both the atria and the ventricle will undergo diastolic, where blood will be filled, which will be followed by atrial systole, that is the contraction of the atria, where blood will be emptied into the ventricles. And once the blood is emptied into the ventricles, now the ventricles will undergo now contraction, and therefore the valves between the atria and the ventricles, that the atrioventricular valves, or rather the cuspid valve, will close. Now the closure of those atrioventricular valves, we said, they produces the first heart sound, that is the lap sound. And basically, class, Now, the contraction of the ventricles will generate a high blood pressure. Number one, it closes the atrioventricular valves. Number two, it opens the semilunar valves at the basis of the aorta and the pulmonary artery. It also enables the blood to be pumped out of the heart to the lungs through the pulmonary artery and to the body organs through the pulmonary vein. Now, that is under normal conditions. Now, when the arteries are hardened by deposition of cholesterol, that means the blood will be under high pressure. The blood will not be flowing smoothly because now the vessels are narrower. Now, the heart will be pumping blood at a high pressure. Now, in that sense, the heart gets overworked. And once the heart gets overworked, the class, the arteries and the capillaries may burst. And once they burst, and we see those arteries and that passes through the brain cells, they may cause stroke, or even at point, they may cause death. Under such instances, they say they can also cause paralysis at some point. That is briefly about the high blood pressure. The causes and the control are very simple, and wish you all the best. Have a nice day.